হুম, শোনা যাচ্ছে?
Yes.
এই শোনা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ শোনা যাচ্ছে।
আচ্ছা।
Hello. Good evening. Welcome. Welcome to everyone and very good evening today. Kolkata Society for Asian Studies arranges this lecture event every year in memory of Acharya Suniti Kumar Chatterji. Suniti Kumar Chatterji was an Indian linguist, educationist, and literator. He was a recipient of the second highest Indian civilian honor of Padma Vibhushan. This year, we are organizing the seventh lecture, which will be delivered by Swami Shastrogyananda Maharaj, Principal, Ramakrishna Mission, Vidya Mandir, Belur Moth, West Bengal. Professor Mohidas Bhattacharya, former head and director of School of Languages and Linguistics, Jadavpur University, and the executive member of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, will introduce Swamiji and our Vice President Durga Bosu to you. Before the main lecture, though Swami Shastrogyanandaji Maharaj is well known enough to many of our audiences, still it is customary. The topic of today's lecture is Indian culture, heritage, and continuity. In modern technology-friendly, gadget-oriented world, it is very relevant to remember and discuss about our heritage and culture. Hope you will be benefited enough and we can offer proper honor and respect to the memory of Professor Suniti Kumar Chatterji. The meeting will be presided by Professor Durga Basu, Vice President, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, and at the end, our Treasurer, Dr. Orpita Basu, Tagore Research Fellow, Anthropological Survey of India, will offer vote of thanks. Welcome, Swamiji, Swami Shastrogyanandaji Maharaj, Professor Bhattacharya, Professor Basu, and Dr. Orpita Basu, and all other members and dignitaries of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, all the respected registered members, registered audiences, and our future YouTube audiences to this lecture event. At the end, I just request all of you to mute your audio and video for just our clearance of the audio. So just we can now start and invite Professor Mohidas Bhattacharya to introduce Swamiji.
Good evening, everybody. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. I express my respect to our Vice President and Previous President, Professor Durga Bosu, and today's speaker, Shastrogyanandaji. And also I provide my regards to the officials of the Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, the executive members and the other members, and the key audience of this program. Personally, this is a good opportunity for me due to the reason is that I had an opportunity to hold this program before this, maybe 2 or 3 times in Jadavpur. And now I have an opportunity to participate directly in this program. And most important honor is that to introduce Swami Shastraganandaji. The reason is that once I had an opportunity to introduce Swami Shastraganandaji to Kumar Sen. Can I remember, sir? So I have a great regard for you, and you provided an excellent observation on Professor Sukumar Sen for the last June, 2019 June. And then this is another time I had a chance to pass with you for some time on the occasion on the memory of Professor Suniti Chatterji. And it's maybe the accidental phenomenon, but I am proud of it and I am honored by the Society for Asian Studies. So on behalf of the Asiatic Societies, I have expressing my regards for you. My part is to introduce Professor Shastraganandaji or teacher Shastraganandaji or Swami Shastraganandaji. It's my part. Personally, I met him 3 years ago, personally, and all of we met him years, especially during the Durga Puja. Whenever you sit in front of him, we met him frequently. And so he does not need any introduction that we have to introduce him and he will produce something is not the fact. Still, some of the audience are here, they do not know some things about his academic work. That's why some points just I want to mention him as I know, but I do not know full. Part of it I know it. It is true, and he is a devoted person, monastic member of Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Ashram. Throughout the country, listening from him on the Vivekananda's philosophy, Ramakrishna's philosophy, Vedanta thought, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Vedanta philosophy, different types of ideas, contribution to the country from him in writing as well as in speech. But beyond that, this monastic devotee, as an academician, we received from him a lot. The Sanskrit literary theories he has contributed on the area of Sanskrit literary theories, which is a matter of proud to us. We listen sometimes from him. His online talk also sometimes we listen to him. He has contributed on the influence of Sanskrit literature on Indian literature, modern Bengali literature. And my most choiceable subject, and I emotionally involved with the subject on linguistics. That when I met him, he was talking with me on sociolinguistics. Being a devoted member of Ramakrishna and Vedanta philosophy, he had a great interest on linguistics. He has a lot of administrative experience. Before that, he is a good teacher. Good teacher means he is exactly a teacher, the source of inspiration of hundreds, better to say thousands of students. This I personally experienced when I visited him in Belur. Last 3 years, frequently I go him and met him. So thousands of students received lots of academic inspiration from him. He is present, so I should not want to say in presence of him, but it's the fact, and we have experienced on it. At least a teacher, he has passed 17 years in undergraduate studies, along with 12 years, 17 years, and 12 years in postgraduate studies in the Department of Bengali, relating other field of academic work. So his contribution as an administration in the formal academic world, as a teacher, as a principal and vice principal, successfully, and that has made Belur Math and Belur Vidya Mandir as one of the great institutes throughout the country. I have great regard, sir. We express our deep regard for your contribution to make this institute as one of the best institutes in the country. Express my deep regard. And other contribution of thought, so we're covering multiple areas he has already contributed in writing, in presentation, in different career, and especially the Vivekananda's thought, which inspired the people of the country. Whenever he talks, people, students, audience receive certain type of readings to make themselves, to realize themselves. So I feel he is an exceptional personality. Being a member of Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission, Vivekananda's thought in the field of academic world, which we listen from him regularly and probably will listen more from him. And today he will introduce the talk on Indian culture and continuity. And I express my deep regard, sir, to you. And now over to you. We are waiting for you, sir. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar. I think I am audible to you. Audible. My deep regards and gratitude to to the members and the organizers of this lecture, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, especially Sharbishtha Bosu, Durga Basu, Mohidash Babu, and others who have invited me in this prestigious talk. I'm seeing that there are so many eminent persons in the audience. Among them, revered Swami Suparanandaji Maharaj also I can see. And naturally, it's a matter of fear also for me, because when he is present in the audience, naturally, I am always very much afraid what to talk and what not to talk. I'm also grateful, and I offer my humble namaskar to all the participants, distinguished members, dignitaries present here today who are taking part in this discussion. Naturally, being a student of language and literature, we are always indebted to Bhashacharya Suniti Kumar Chattopadhyay. All of you know that without his guidance, which he imparts till date through his books, unimaginably greatest creations in Bengali language and literature. So naturally, we are being the student of Bengali language and literature, we are always indebted to him. And for that reason, I feel that it's a really privilege to me to discuss something, to speak something in such an occasion where his name is associated with. So I also offer my humble pronouns to the legendary writer, critic, researcher of the year of yesteryears, Professor Suniti Chatterji. Now coming to today's topic. Whenever we speak this topic, Indian culture, whenever we want to talk on Indian heritage, people from all sectors naturally become a little anxious, a little skeptic whether it will be something biased or not, especially in today's scenario. Not only today's scenario, in last 100 years, I think the same thing is going on. Whenever we talk on this Indian heritage system, Indian cultural tradition, naturally, eyebrows of the critics become a little tangent. Will they speak? Will the speaker straightway go to religion, Hindu religion? This is a very important question, doubt, fear, apprehension that speakers like us or even other speakers on the same theme may face. I have faced the same thing in different fora when I have talked almost on the same theme or on allied topics. But still, I feel that when we Indians try to decipher the Indian culture, when we Indians try to uncover the great traditions of our country, of our nation, we should be truthful. The Orientalist or the Occidentalist, they may have their own views, they may have their own interpretations, but when we Indians will try to discuss on it, will try to go deep into the Indian cultural tradition, we should not get afraid of anything, whichever is going on outside. Keeping this approach in my mind, I will try to share some of my opinions, some of my points of views with you. Yes, being an argumentative Indian, all of you have the right either to accept or to discard, either to confirm or to debate. Perhaps these are the very significant characteristic features of Indian culture and tradition. I will not go to find out the chronological development of Indian culture. I will just give a pen picture of that. Just I will try to portray a little of that in a loose manner. Historians will deal that. What I see when as a student of history, common student, an ordinary student of history, or as an ordinary student of literature, when we study Indian history, the development of Indian history, we need to study from pre-Vedic age and Vedic age. And we find that our cultural journey, the journey of our heritage, commenced right from the pre-Vedic age. although we don't get the entire canvas of that time, but still, through archaeological inventions and through other types of discoveries, nowadays we are seeing that our pre-Vedic traditions from the Vedic tradition. In fact, in Buddhist approach, there were many clear-cut characteristics we find today which show that he took many things from our Upanishads, from our Vedic traditions. Truly speaking, our Vedic traditions were diafold mainly. One was based on karma, rituals. Another was based on jnana, knowledge. The rituals. Sometimes when we try to follow, God knows why and how, people can't say why and how, but it happens. We have seen the rituals slowly gather new momentum, go on adding to something new automatically with them. We don't know how and why, but it happens. We have seen. So it happened same in the case in the Vedic age. The karma kanda, the ritualistic part of the Vedic tradition, to some extent overwhelmed the society, our day-to-day activities, our different social interactions. Buddha understood that for this reason, between karma and jnana, but for some reason or other, when these rituals become overwhelmingly influential, jnana as if become subordinate to ritual. Buddha identified that. And it was he who, along with compassion, welcomed the human souls, the seekers for higher knowledge, the seekers for higher truth, to tread on the path of knowledge. So, Buddha is the personality who found out the gap areas which was historically came up in the later Buddhist Vedic tradition, and he could try to reshape the Indian tradition. No doubt, the Vedic tradition and the Buddhist tradition could reshape, could make this reshaping phenomenon in Indian history. But still, even the Buddhist tradition, along with Jaina tradition also there, they also tried to do the same thing. to some extent. But still we found this Buddhist tradition again, especially when the millennium started, in the first millennium, in the first half of the first millennium, in the first 500 years of the first millennium, we found that Buddhist tradition became a little arrogant in the sense that time Buddha was not there, his followers were there, they were philosophers, great philosophers, but they cultivated only the knowledge. And naturally, the common mass, the ordinary rank and file, could not identify themselves with this hardcore epistemological knowledge-based approach of Buddhist tradition. Later on, we know this Buddhist tradition had a mixture with Tantric and to some extent Vaishnava tradition also. And in 9th and 10th century, from 9th and 10th century AD, there arose a new tradition in the name of Sahajiya Buddhist tradition. That is a new tradition. And in fact, that could not impact significantly on the entire canvas of Indian tradition and Indian culture. However, in the second half of the first millennium, thus we saw Indian history, Indian tradition and culture saw another change. When Shankara, Ramanuja came in 300 and 400 years, within 300 and 400 year span, we saw, apart from them, some other also came. It was to some extent an era of Vedic revival of Vedic age. But it is a neo-Vedic tradition because Shankara and Ramanuja, both of them could well understand that Indian tradition should not give the entire emphasis on rituals. There should be a dominant culture of knowledge, argumentative, interactive, analytical knowledge. But at the same time, they also understood the common mass need some practical approaches in their life, in their social life, when they face these social problems, when they face some difficulties, some constraints in their individual life, what they should do. What Buddha said, Shunya is the ultimate reality, and Nirvana is the ultimate goal. Shankara told it is only Brahma, just as if he replaced the world, taking the Upanishadic ideas. It was not his novel ideas. It was there in Upanishads. He only interpreted it for common mass. And you are Shankara, who could drag these Upanishads from the Himalayan caves for the entire country. And he was Shankara, who, for the first time in Indian history, could identify the Indianness in its first sense of the Indian tradition. This Indianness, Shankara established in both ways. One, in cultivating the Upanishadic knowledge, which straightway declares the oneness, the one unity of the entire creation, Ekam Sat. But at the same time, in realistic world, it is plural, Bahu, Bahudha Vadanti. The ultimate goal is to realize this unity, not only in the universe, but in an individual. So this is the Indianness that Shankara could decipher for the first time in Indian history, where India declares, announces that yes, each individual has the same potential divinity. Later, Swamiji spoke it in a more lucid way. The aim is to manifest it. It was there in the Upanishads. Shankara could identify that this is the Indianness based on which the Indian culture started its journey from the pre-Vedic and Vedic period, and based on which the Indian tradition, Indian culture should continue its journey. But at the same time, he understood that this may listen something abstract. The common mass, despite identifying this abstract philosophy, requires to have some practical application. So he established monasteries in 4 corners of this country. See how peculiar, how interesting it is. He could identify the geographical boundary of this country for the first time in Indian history. Based on this monastery, Indian society will try to build up. He did not part away with all the Vedic rituals, but at the same time, he minimized all those things. So this is another paradigm shift in Indian culture. But still, what Shankara introduced as a practical demonstration, we saw in Ramanuja and in later time, in the second millennium of Indian history, we found in Bhakti movement. Sometimes we think that Shankara was only a knowledge seeker. Whatever he did, it was only knowledge, epistemological something. Vedanta, everything. No, he had a prayerful mind. He knew that for the practical purpose, people in their social life, in their cultural life, in their individual life, need this typical prayerful approach, singing, hymns. So wonderful hymns he composed. The world is still waiting to find out the depth of the hymns Shankara composed. Indian history one day will be able to find out that second millennium Bhakti movement had its deep root in those prayerful hymns. The second millennium Bhakti school, Bhakti movement, was another unique addition to Indian treasure house. What was this addition? This was the addition where we found that common mass movement started based on this Bhakti movement, Bhakti culture. You go to the Western world, Western India, Gujarat, Narasimha Mehta. You come to Eastern India, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So many came. Kabir, Dadu, Ravidas, so many during this period. And they could create a mass movement. And naturally, this was a great addition which still in India is being nurtured by different sections of people in different ways. You may think that I am only speaking of the spiritual tradition. No. What I mean to say that the spiritual tradition, the spiritual culture was a unifying one in Indian tradition. Yes. In that Indian tradition, we saw Charvakas who could debate, who could refute, who could reject the ideas of other Indian schools of philosophy, so-called theist school of philosophy. There were Ajivikas. But this spiritual unifying culture of Indian heritage did not exclude the Charvakas, nor they exclude the Ajivikas. Everyone was accepted. This is the spiritual unifying cultural movement that India has been able to initiate right from its pre-Vedic age. Innumerable invasions Indian history witnessed. A Western historian has told thus that India is nothing but an ethnological museum in which numberless races of mankind, ranging from savages of lower degree to polished philosophers, have got sheltered. Yes, this is because this Indian spiritual unifying cultural movement that India introduced right from its pre-Vedic age. Along with that, there was production of literary creations. The Vedic literature itself gave us very rich literary treasure. Even if we read the Upanishadic hymns, the Nasadiya Shukta, we are dumbfounded to see how beautifully they could portray the nature which they witnessed beyond the nature, how beautifully they could portray the beauty of nature, how beautifully they could portray the fearful approach of the nature. In Greek philosophy, in Greek literature, nature has been painted in two ways, as benigna and as maligna, beautiful and terrifying. In Indian Vedic literature also, we have found they have portrayed the nature. They started from this soil of the earth, but while creating literature, they could reach beyond the azure world as appeared in front of them. They could overcome the barrier of time and space, the sublimity of which the literature speaks till date was the invention of our Vedic rishis. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agnihi tameva bhantam manubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. What a unique creation. What a sublime creation it is. The world poetry is still waiting to touch this sublimity. Not only in Vedic age, in the later days, we have found so many writers came. We have found people like Kalidasa in later age. So many and so many they are in the line. In Avidyana Shakuntalam, in Meghadutam, in Vana's creations, Vanabhatta's creation, is Vasha's creation, in Shudraka's creation, what we saw? Our society, our tradition, our imagination. And all these different, apparently opposite, contradictory societal pictures could have been portrayed by our poets, by our writers. And all these things were appreciated through the passage of the age. Why? Because we had this unifying cultural movement, spiritually unifying cultural movement. That is the movement which gave the message to the world that we don't discard anything. Swami Vivekananda in his first lecture in the famous Chicago addresses pointed out this phenomenal characteristic of Indian tradition. And he recited a unique passage, a couplet from the Shiva Mahimna Stotra. Ruchinam Vaichitrat Rijukutilanana Pathajusham Nrinamiko Gamyastamasi Payasam Arnavanga. This is not only true in the case of spiritual seekers. This is true for all facets of Indian life. And that is the heritage we are now inheriting with us. That is the culture, the flag of which we are bound to carry with us. But at the same time, it is true that from the 18th century, Indian culture and heritage saw another paradigm shift, where European culture came to us. As you know, the famous lines composed by Rabindranath. তারপরে শূন্য হলো ঝঞ্ঝার ক্ষুব্ধ নিবিড় নিশীথে দিল্লি রাজশালা একে একে কক্ষে কক্ষে লাগিল মিশিতে দীপালোকমালা সবলুব্ধ গৃধ্রদের ঊর্ধ্বস্বর বিভৎস চিৎকারে মোগল মহিমা রচিল শ্মশান শয্যা মুষ্টিমেয় ভস্য রেখাকারে হলো তার সীমা এবং তারপরে বণিকের মানদণ্ড সবরি পোহানোর পরেই দেখা দিল রাজদণ্ড। This is another significant transformation in Indian cultural tradition that we witnessed. European movement came. That was the Renaissance movement which cropped up in European soil, and through their machinery, the machinery of church, the machinery of the king, the machinery of the church and the machinery of the administration, the machinery of the padris and the machinery of the kings, the Europeans preached that Renaissance movement that brought with them three cardinal messages. One, rationalism. Two, individualism. Three, humanism. And these three cardinal messages which India saw right from the beginning of the 18th century and throughout the 19th century and also in the first 1 or 2 decades in 20th century was something unique to them. Because this was the culture, this was the movement which brought with them a new religion which straightway told that our ancient scriptures are something imaginary, baseless, has no logic, has no depth. And in the second approach, the movement which told the Indian culture that you don't need to believe in something, Atman, Brahman, God, no. And with their power, monetary power, administrative power, they went on pressing these two significant messages that we should accept. We should forget our ancestry. We should forget our history. We should build up new tradition. You know the 19th century history. I will not go in detail. But really, different parts of the country were bewildered what they should do, how they should accept this new one. Should they totally reject, or they should they partially accept, or there should be a blending. Ramakrishna Vivekananda, two great advents Indian history of 19th century witnessed. Along with, there were several ones. Vidyasagar, Ram Mohan Vidyasagar, Bankim Chandra, another speciality with Tagore's culture, Rabindranath, the culmination we saw. And Indian culture could start its combat. They could make this neo-European movement understand that new Indian culture, new Indian heritage will surely be born, will surely be built up, but that will never discard thousands of years of Indian cultural tradition, that spiritually unifying cultural movement that will never forget, that will never part away with. Although this new Indian cultural movement proved that they have sufficient liberal mind setup to accept whatever is good in Western world. They will accept the things, their science and technology. But at the same time, they will not leave a single inch of a single inch, a single room, a single space for the Westerners. That was really an important, a matchless battle that Indian history could witness. Blessed are those who could see Professor Suniti Chattopadhyay, I think one of this person who could see this, who could understand this battle, and so he could write the essence of Indian culture in some of his unique essays. Thus, Indian culture and heritage is going on. Now, at the end, I will try to list out once again that what then we have found in this long journey of Indian heritage as the basic tenets that we need to nurture till date, still today. What may be these fundamental features? One, search for knowledge. Right from the pre-Vedic age till date, this is the Indian culture that we have never refrained. We have never abstained from this from the quest for the knowledge, whatever knowledge it may be. In our ancient age, there was the search for Brahman. There was the search for the existence of zero. Sadeva samma idamagra asit, asadeva samma idamagra asit. Both these views were there. Buddha told that shunyam adhyatmikam drishtva shunyam drishtva tu bahyata. And Gaurapada told tatvam drishtva tu tatvam adhyatmikam drishtva tatvam drishtva tu bahyata. The fullness and the zero, whatever it may be, the quest for knowledge was there, has been there, is still there. Till today, we are seeing in our independent India, we have seen Professor J.C. Bose, Prafulla Chandra Ray, and different other scientists, great writers, right? Rabindranath Tagore, Subramanya Bharati, how they dedicated their life in search for knowledge. Two, a contemplative versus argumentative approaches of life. Indian cultural tradition could build up these apparently paradoxical approaches of life. At one side, contemplative, at another side, argumentative. Yes, when a message trying to realize the soul, the inner self. I am contemplating. But when I'm trying to analyze the truth, I'm using the very crude, hair-splitting arguments we are deploying. The students of Indian philosophers who have read Khandana Khanda Khadya of Harsha, the Nagarjuna's philosophical treatise, are the witness how Indian argumentative mind was developed. One side, they are so much keen for contemplation. At another side, they are ready for argumentation. Still today, same thing is going on. We have seen so many monks, people of different walks of life, who are contemplating when they are trying to search the truth within themselves, but at the same time, when they are trying to analyze the truth, decipher the truth, unfold different aspects of the truth, unravel different mysteries of knowledge, they are putting their most difficult, crude argumentations. 3, creating this unifying diversity, creating a unified diversity. Indian tradition has always accepted the diversity, but that diversity has never prompted us to discard anyone. That has not precluded anyone in our culture. This diversity has always a message with it, that despite diversity, we have one unifying truth. Srinantu Vishwe Amritasya Putra Aye Dhamani Divyani Tastu Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam Aditya Varanam Tamasah Parasta Tameva Viditva Atimrityumedi Nanya Pantha Vidyate Ayana. He had the courage to say that I have been able to realize the highest truth. You come, I call you. You may test, you may experiment. You may be a non-believer, you may be a believer. You may be a skeptic, you may be a theist. You may have a scientific approach, you may have a prayerful mind. We accommodate you. This diversity is not something alienated one. This diversity is something which has within itself a perennial unifying message that will never perish in any time to come. 4, welcoming the life enjoyments, but journeying beyond hedonism. Never think that Indian culture and tradition have rejected the enjoyments. No. See our sculptures, see our paintings. They have enjoyed the life. They are so much joyous seeing the different manifestations of nature, of the Mother Earth. They worshipped a tree, they worshipped a river. They composed hymns on rivers. Why? They enjoyed the flow, the music of the water flow. They enjoyed the color of the sky. They enjoyed the play of the people. So they could portray the things. They enjoyed the life. Till date, we are enjoying the life. Right from the pre-Vedic age till date. It's Indian culture. But we have never thought that this life is only for consumerism, is meant for any hedonism. No, our journey is with the life, is from the life, is with the life, and ultimately beyond the life. We love the life, we go beyond the life. We accept the life, we go beyond the life. We welcome the life, we go beyond the life. And that's the Indian message to the world. Don't become afraid of death, because it is nothing but another phase of life. This is the enjoyment of life that Indian culture and tradition has always been preaching for the world. And last but not the least, the spirituality, the innermost truth, the inner engineering that Indian culture is always sharing with everyone of this universe. Indian culture, Indian heritage never tells that even an ant is someone which is negligible. No, nothing is nonchalant to Indian cultural tradition. They believe even an ant, even the smallest creature, the most nonchalant creature of the world, will evolve itself. How? Through the manifestation of the spirituality. In today's language, inner engineering. We should try to see our inner world. We are always exposed to the great external world, but we should never forget our internal world. Whatever is going on in our inner world, we try to purify it. In the process of purification, in the process of the search of the innermost reality within our individual existence, we will be able to evolve ourselves from the beastly creature to the manly one, from the human creature to something sublime, unmatched sublime. Where I will tell, Aham Brahma Asmi, I am that supreme Brahman. This is the courageous statement, straightforward, bold statement that Indian culture, Indian tradition, Indian heritage has told us to be taught and to teach. Indian heritage has preached the world. To realize this, to preach this. This is the spirituality. This is the inner engineering that Indian culture and tradition has always been preaching. Undoubtedly true. 19th century, 20th century, the last part of 20th century, and this part of the new millennium is witnessing different paradoxical metamorphosis. in our lifestyle, in our thinking process, in our psyche, in our interaction, in our communication. But at the same time, it is true that history has proved none of these movements, be it a sociological, a scientific, a psychological, a literary, a cultural, whatever it may be, none of these movements have ever been able to establish a peaceful, a contemplative, a serenity preaching world environment for the posterity. No, never. There have been so many experiments with different social movements, economic movements, postmodern movements. But still, we are in a fix. Still, we are perplexed. We are seeing the breakage in our family life. We are seeing the split, undesired split in our organizational life. We are witnessing different confliction in our social life. We are afraid and anguished to find out different state conflicts based on religion, based on science, based on sociology. We have not been able to find out the way out, the solution. The solution is there in Indian spirituality, in Indian tradition. As Vivekananda said, it is Indian tradition which will, at the end, will be able to rescue the individual, will be able to deliver the deliverance for the entire humanity. The mukti, the ultimate mukti, the ultimate peace, that is the search of humanity till now. Who will give it? This Indian cultural tradition, one which I have termed as spiritually unifying cultural movement. And that is the legacy this India has given us. That is the proper Indianness which we will be able to build up once we are involved in this movement, once we become flag bearers of this movement. I fervently hope that the entire humanity in its future days will surely witness, will surely come to have its serene shelter under the Himalayas, upon the ocean, on the soil of our mother India. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Maharaji. We are really enriched with your lecture. And now I invite Professor Durga Basu to preside over the meeting.
Namaskar, Maharaj. At the very outset, I pay my heartfelt respect to all of you for your kind presence in this webinar. And it's a great privilege to have with us Maharaj Swami Shastrakanandaji, and he has delivered an excellent lecture on Indian culture and heritage. And truly speaking, it is so mesmerizing that I don't want to say anything after hearing Maharaj. And it is very difficult for us to say about Indian culture and heritage. So we are illuminated by his lecture. And I can express only our deepest respect and gratitude to Maharaj for illuminating us in such a way that we can think over the entire subject. It is really wonderful to see how Maharaj has explained the whole gamut of Indian culture, heritage within a 1 hour, and expressing all India's her own culture, that is the material, non-material culture. And I can say only that it is a journey. Maharaj rightly said that it is a journey. Right from our culture when it started 5,000 years back, from the pre-Vedic age to the 19th century. So the journey, it is simply not a journey but a pilgrimage. So it is. So we are spellbound, Maharaj. After hearing you, we have nothing to say. That only we can say that is the most fundamental element of Indian culture is the issue of religion, religious beliefs, and its symbolic expression. So through this journey, you have explained wonderfully from the very beginning that Vedic age to from the Vedic to the modern age, and how you have shown us that paradigm shift of not only the religious beliefs, it is not only the philosophical revival, but at the same time it is a paradigm shift in our society, culture, and even in the different phases of political life. So in one field, in one journey, Maharaj has shown us how all this culture, all these aspects of the basic aspects of culture has been imbibed and in oneness, that is the Indianness. So we are again grateful to Maharajji for expressing all this culture, and just we are just thinking over it. And frankly speaking, I have no words to explain your and to say any words about this Indian culture. I just want to think over it, whatever you have said, whatever you have expressed through this, the material and non-material aspects of Indian life. So my deepest respect to Maharaj, and all the listeners, must best wishes to all the listeners. And definitely we will again in future, we will definitely invite Maharaj for illuminating us again and again. Thank you, Maharaj. Namaskar.
Thank you, Durgadi. Now I invite Orpita Bosu, our treasurer, to offer your vote of thanks.
Respected President, Professor Durga Basu, Vice President of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, our Chief Speaker, Swami Shastragananda Maharajji, Dr. Mohidash Bhattacharya, Executive Member of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, our friends, well-wishers, members of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, and students. It is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies for today's program. COVID-19 is a crisis for all of us. We all have new normal life with a lot of challenges. Still, there are some positivities in this situation. Under these circumstances, I take this opportunity to extend our gratitude to our President, Professor Durga Basu, for sparing her valuable time to address the gathering, as well as to preside over the event. It has been our pleasure to host Swami Shastragananda Maharajji for today's lecture. We are really very grateful to him for accepting our invitation to deliver lecture in lecture series of Suniti Chatterji Memorial Lecture 7. Our special thanks to Dr. Mohidas Bhattacharya for accepting our invitation of introducing today's speaker. An event like this would not have been possible overnight. It requires planning and team effort. In this connection, we are very much thankful to all our executive committee members for their continuous support and advice for successfully organizing the lecture. Our special thanks to Tomogno Rai, State-Aided College Teacher, Department of Computer Science, Sarojini Naidu College of Women, for providing technical support to organize this event. My thanks also go to all the people who have given their precious time in organizing this lecture. In particular, I would like to acknowledge and thank Dr. Shormishta Debasu, Secretary of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, for being the convener of the program. I cannot thank everyone enough for the involvement they have shown and the willingness they have expressed to take on the completion of this task beyond their comfort zones. Finally, thanks to all distinguished members of the audience for their virtual presence at this function. Thank you.
নমস্কার নমস্কার মানে আমাদের এক্সপ্রেস করার কোনো ভাষা নেই, মানে ইটস ফ্রম দ্য বটম অফ মাই হার্ট আপনাকে এটা আনঅফিশিয়ালি বলছি, এখন তো আমরা এর বাইরে সেমিনারের বাইরে, কিন্তু এই ওয়ান্ডারফুল লেকচার মহারাজ, মানে ইট শোজ ইয়োর ভাস্ট নলেজ and your practices, religious practices, everything. So Maharaj, I'm absolutely spellbound. আমি মানে এখন আমার কোনো কথাই বলতে ইচ্ছে করে, মনে হচ্ছে আপনার এই কথাগুলো আমরা শুনি। Definitely we will publish your lecture, definitely, and we will expect that you will give us the write-up on that particular subject so that we can publish it. Okay, Maharaj. Many thanks and pranam, Maharaj.
Pranam, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
So we take. Okay. Okay. Sure.